Hey y'all, CB Phillips here at NBS Welding, world headquarters right here, positioned in the heart of the beautiful Appalachian Basin, doing another grating job. So let's take a look. Now I've already cut the grating on this. The last grating job I did, I actually filmed cutting the grating, and when I cut grating, I used the 8-inch Milwaukee metal cutter, heavy duty circular saw. I've had a couple different brands of these. The Milwaukee, in my opinion, is the best. There was quite a bit of interest in that saw when I posted that last grading video. And in that last grading video, I actually filmed the cutting. I didn't film it this time. Tina was actually working on my phone when I cut this. But anyway, what I'm getting at is if you're interested in watching me cut the grating with the Milwaukee metal cutter, go back and check out that other video. It's in there. This video is going to be more focused on this job being a little bit different in the way that I'm doing it. Now, on the last one I did, cut grating for a drain trough. It was for a buddy of mine. It was for an area where there's not going to be a lot of traffic, and we didn't band the grating or weld anything to it. The grating bends easy in one direction if you don't band it or weld bands on the ends of it. But like I say, the one that I did in the just recent past, where I did it for a buddy of mine and we didn't band it, there's not going to be a lot of traffic there, and we were trying to save him some money, and it was one of the things where he's a good enough buddy of mine that we could try it and see if we can get a good outcome that way. And if there's a problem, he'll let me know there's a problem and I'll take care of it. But in this situation, on the job I'm doing right now, the customer has told me that they want it done right. If it costs a little more, that's fine. This is the type of thing where I'm not going to want to take, when somebody tells me that, I don't want to take any chances. I can tell that what this customer wants is he wants it one and done, don't want to worry about it, doesn't want to mess with it for a long time, and that's what I want to deliver on. Part of the reason that this customer needs new grating is his old grating rotted. It just rusted away. And that's a really good reason to use galvanized grating, because this hot dip galvanized grating, this is really good stuff for corrosion resistance. And like I talked in the last video, the only issue that we got to deal with is where you cut it on the end, it's not galvanized. Now, if you wanted it truly galvanized, the hot dip galvanized like the rest of this very durable coating, you'd have to fabricate the grates and then have them hot dip galvanized post fabrication, which isn't really practical. There's not a galvanizer near here. The trucking on that and the cost of galvanizing would be ridiculously high. But like I said in my last grading video, I use a product called ZRC, which is a cold galvanizing compound. And for what we can do for corrosion resistance, the ZRC is about the best you're going to get. And it does do a very good job. It's a very high zinc formula. It's not cheap. A gallon of ZRC is well over $300. It's not like you're buying Rust-Oleum at Lowe's. This is a very expensive product. Now, what we're going to be doing on this job is banding the bar grating. So I'll talk quick about what banding is. When you have bar grating like this, in this direction, if you're driving across it, this grating is very strong. You're not going to bend these vertical bars that way. But these round bars in the other direction, not so strong. So when you cut your grating and you're getting ready to use it, a standard practice that metal fabricators do is they'll take a piece of 1-inch flat bar or whatever size grating you have. We're using 1-inch grating. If it was 1.5 inches, we'd have 1.5 inch flat bar. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the 1-inch flat bar. This is a 1/4 by 1, and we're going to cut bars that we're going to weld across the end of this. Those bars will stiffen this grating so that we're not just counting on those round bars to keep it straight and stiff. Two problems when we do this that we're creating is, one, this flat bar is not galvanized. This is just a bare steel. Another thing is, when we weld on our galvanized grating here on the end, and if you look where we've cut it, those areas are not galvanized. That's where the cold galvanizing comes in. We're going to be, what I'm planning on doing, and I'm hoping this works, is not only am I going to be banding the bar grating to stiffen it, and not only am I going to be coating it with ZRC cold galvanizing compound, but two other critical things about this that's different that I'm going to be doing. One, I'm going to be leaving a gap between the flat bar and the grating. There's two reasons for that gap. One, it's going to give me a really good penetration weld on the top and bottom, whilst two, leaving an opening between the end of the flat bar on the grating and the flat part of the flat bar on the flat bar. So why is that important? Because I want to get ZRC in there. If I push this flat bar tight up against the grating, you're not going to get paint in there. You're not going to get your ZRC in there. So if I was telling most people what I'm telling you right now, they would say, oh, so you're going to spray the ZRC. No, I'm not going to spray the ZRC. You can get spray cans of ZRC. They're wildly expensive, and it's not very much product. That's why I'm a fan of the gallons. You also can get spray cans of other brands of cold galvanizing compound, and the last spray cans of cold galvanizing compound I had were Rust-Oleum, and they were terrible. The tips clogged up. They didn't work well. They didn't spray that well. It didn't work. Here's my plan on what I'm going to do this time on this job. I'm going to be taking this piece of angle iron and I'm going to make a trough. I'm going to be taking this piece of angle iron, I'm going to be setting it up like that, and I'm going to be welding a flat bar on the end of it that makes this a trough. And it's a few inches longer than one of my 3-foot grates. So I'm going to be filling this trough with ZRC and dipping the edge of the bar grating in it. So what I'm going to be doing is using some xylene. That's a very chemically potent thinner. And I'm going to be thinning that ZRC down thin enough that the zinc-rich compound goes between the flat bar and the bar grating so that everything gets coated. And when I dip it, I'll be coating that flat bar that's just a mild steel flat bar that's not galvanized. If this works, it's going to be an extremely effective and efficient way to make the edges of these grates corrosion resistant. Now, there's another part of this that I'm going to have to deal with right off the bat, and that's what I'm about to do now. This hot rolled mild steel flat bar has mill scale on it. That's that gray stuff, flaky gray stuff. In order to get a really good coating of the ZRC on this, I want that to be bare steel. So I'm going to be taking the burnishing tool, and I'm going to just, while this is a 20-foot joint, before I even start to cut it, I'm gonna buff it right down to the mild steel and get rid of the mill scale, and it'll be cleaned up and ready to go before we even cut it to length. That way we'll have the mill scale and everything out of the way in the most efficient way possible. I won't have to take individual bars and try to sand the mill scale off. So let's do it. got a piece of that, about half of it cleaned up down to bare metal, got rid of all that mill scale on the flat bar, and I'm having a little bit of trouble with the flat bar just because it's floppy. When I try to move it around, it wants to fall off the table, and it's 20 feet long. The table's only 10, and I just realized that it might benefit me to just go ahead over to the saw and set up a stop and cut a few of the pieces off of the piece that I already have shined up. That's going to shorten it. And since that's already clean, there's no reason to not go ahead and make it shorter by cutting some of my pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll have a shorter piece to deal with to clean up and get rid of mill scale, and I won't have to fight that long piece of flat bar. So let's see how that cutting goes in the saw. Now with the parts cut and mill slag removed, this is what we're looking like. Our flat bars look a lot different because they don't have that mill scale on them anymore. This is bare steel that's been burnished with the 40 grit wheel. So the ZRC should stick to that flat bar really well. And we got our grates ready to start welding, really. Get everything straight and start welding. Now there's 5 of those grates, and then I've got 2 fill-in pieces. So the way this is going to look, you know, there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And these are the 3-foot wide grates that they're 3 foot because that's how the material comes. You buy it 20 foot long, 3 foot wide. Now, in order to fill in this spot that's 202 inches, those 5 grates at 3 foot, you know, pretty much 15 foot of grating with about an inch gap in between them, leaves us about 16.5 inches or 16 inches, I think, left. And that's the reason for these 2 little ones, which in my mind I'd put at the end. You could stick them anywhere, you know, but I'm imagining as symmetrical as possible. Since you have the 5, you know, you have a 3 foot one in the center, and then 2 on each side that are 3 foot, and then an 8 inch and an 8 inch. And that's not going to be exactly 8 inch. Actually, I think these are cut at 8 1/4. Another thing about the way I've done this, these 3 foot wide bar gratings, if you measure actually from the outside of this bar to the outside of this bar, you know, you get, there's a little bit sticking out on the round bar right here, but you get 35 3/4 is what you get outside to outside here. But obviously, it doesn't hurt if there's an inch gap in between your grates. So I've cut my flat bars 3/4 of an inch longer than what the grate is wide. So it's common for me to see about 3/8 of an inch of this sticking out. And you may have 3/8 of an inch of this sticking out, and then an 1/8 inch gap, and then another one, and then another bar. We're going to get going on assembling this, and the thing that we're going for the coating to get in there and to get a good weld is we're actually going to be intentionally fitting this up with a gap between the bar grating and the flat bar. That gap's going to be about 1/8 of an inch, and I did take some off of my width when I cut these to allow for that. So that's not the only thing you got to allow for. You've also got to allow for the thickness of the flat bar. These flat bars that I'm putting on here are 1/4 of an inch. In the end, we'd want this about 11.5 or a little less. So it would take you down to 11 inches if you just take off the 2/4 inch pieces of flat bar on each side, and then another 1/4 of an inch for an 1/8 inch gap here and an 1/8 inch gap here. And I think most of these, when I checked them as I was cutting them, I was getting a width of about 10 5/8 to 10 3/4. So, you know, if we add 1/8 inch on each side for the gap and a 1/4 inch on each side for the flat bar, we're still going to be 11.5 or less. So we should be good. So let's go to putting these together, and we'll also be, while we're welding that up, we'll also be welding up our trough. Like I talked about to dip these in. I plan on filling this trough full of cold galvanizing compound and dipping the bars in. That's part of the thing I want to try that I've never done before for the corrosion resistance here. Got them all put together here. Got a heavy tack on the top, heavy tack on the bottom. If I hold this like this, you can see how there's a gap. That's where I'm hoping that my ZRC gets back inside of there. I've done these on engineered drawings before where it was spec'd out all kinds of different ways. Sometimes there's a tack on the top and on the bottom. Sometimes they're welded solid. Sometimes instead of a flat bar, there's an angle iron, and the angle iron is welded down the vertical and across the flat. Just different ways of doing it. I'm completely confident that this heavy tack on the top and heavy tack on the bottom is strong enough. And the reason I don't think in this case it's worth welding more than that is because the more you weld it, the more heat you put on it, the more of the galvanized coating that you're removing. And the corrosion resistance, I think, is more important than worrying about the structural on this, because I think with the tacks, a heavy tack on the top and a heavy tack on the bottom with that gap, structurally, I think is good. Not worried about it. So the next thing is going to be putting the ZRC coating on the ends of these. And I've got my trough set up here. And I've got the ZRC thinned down with xylene. And I've got it poured in here. I may need it thicker or thinner, I don't know. I've got it pretty thin. I'm going to start out thinner because I want it to go in the cracks as good as I can. There was some of them that closed up and don't have as much of an opening as others. And that's not the greatest, but you know, I did the best I could. And I think it's going to work out real well. So next up is dipping these in the ZRC. And when you do this dipping technique, you definitely have to have your stuff thinned down. I've done it before, and I know that you want it even thinner than if you're going to spray it. But the thing about it is, like, 5 coats is nothing. When this is this thin and you're dipping it, you know, it'll dry really fast. It's no big deal to get like 4 or 5 coats of something on there, because, you know, you've got so much of a solvent in your product that it's going to dry really fast, and you can keep dipping it in there and it'll dry again and you can dip it in there. But if you don't thin it and you dip it, it'll be on your steel way too thick, and it'll take forever to dry. And the other problem in this case, obviously, is I want it to go back into all these little gaps, and it's going to have to be thin to do that. So I'm going to double check everything and make sure nothing else needs cleaned up or sanded. And if it doesn't, I'm going to start dipping. All right, well, the dipping's going pretty good. Found a few things I did that wasn't real smart. First thing, why didn't I do that outside in the first place? It's a beautiful day and it's sunny and everything. So I got everything moved outside. The other thing that wasn't very bright was I should have known there'd be a lot of drips. I got some of that on my boots, and the boots I was wearing was the newest pair of boots I got. I done cleaned the stuff off of them with the xylene, and that's no big deal. And I put on the boots that I use when I run the trimmer on the creek bank. So we're going to get lots of drips on them, and we're going to think that's a lot of fun. In the break room right now, drinking some water, good well water from here in the bottom. And the other thing, I was doing all that with my bare hands, and I got ZRC all over my hands, and that was dumb. I had to take paint thinner and get it off my hands with the xylene paint thinner. I got rubber gloves for that, and I should have had them on. But, yeah, it's going good. I got to wait a little while in between dips. But we'll do the rest of the dipping outside and let the drips fall on the rocks. And, yeah, like that. Wanted to show you, these are the grates. I brought them back. These are the grates that were in place at that feller's house, and they're they are some kind of a bar grating, and this is a 2-inch channel welded on each side of them that has rotted completely through. And these being as long as they are, you know, that was more of a hassle for him when he cleaned it out. He likes the 3-foot pieces better. Obviously, it's going to be easier to deal with moving them around. But in order for me to, he didn't want them, so I said, well, I'll recycle the steel. I can scrap it. So we're going to put these in the piggy bank. In order for me to sell this stuff for junk, to get the best price, it needs to be less than 4 feet long. So I'll have to torch these in half. It'll take me a minute. It's not going to be any big deal. Anyway, that's it for this one. I ended up welding the flat bars on and dipping them. I've welded those flat bars and banded bar grating like that a bunch of times, but that's the first time that I have set up a trough like I did and dipped the end of them in ZRC. The last job I did like that, I tried to use spray cans. I was using a Rust-Oleum brand cold galvanizing compound, and had, like I said, I had an awful time with the tips clogging up, and I kept having to. I had a glass container, a jar full of acetone, and I was having to repeatedly put the tip in the acetone, shake it up, put the tip back on the can. Sometimes I'd spray for 2 minutes, sometimes I'd spray for 2 seconds, and it would clog back up. That Rust-Oleum spray didn't work very good. I will tell you that for a spray can, I've used the ZRC spray, and it works. I had no trouble spraying that. But it's very expensive. Those cans don't have very much product in them, and they are very expensive. But I think the dipping was a good option, and I think it did a good job. And that's it for this one. Simple bar grating job. Thanks for watching.